This is a special edition of our Community Access. Today, we will visit with State Representative Brad Jacobsen. Brad will help sort out the Proposal 1. That's the gas tax that will be on the May 5th election. All today on our Community Access. Welcome back. Now is our story with Terry Stiles with State Representative Brad Jacobsen. Terry?
Hi, Bill. We're back in the studios this week, and I want to talk about this. This is from the Detroit Free Press, and this is about the Proposal 1 that's going to be on our ballots on May 5th. And with me to clarify and hopefully answer some of my questions is our State Representative Brad Jacobsen. Brad, thanks for being here today.
Terry, very happy to be with you today.
I'm going to try not to hit you with the hard stuff really fast.
Throw it at me, whatever you got.
You actually recommended this to me. The Detroit Free Press really described what's going on with this ballot.
Right. This is a section, a special section that was in the Detroit Free Press on Sunday, March 29th. I went on their website. You can't find this exact piece, but there's bits and pieces of this article in the Free Press. So if you go to the Free Press on their website, type in road funding or road proposal, it brings up a whole bunch of the different articles that are in this 6-8 page.
Related to this.
Right. It explains it really very well. I was very pleased, and I've used it as a reference in some of the other speaking engagements I've done on the issue.
Oh, good. Because part of the issue with people is there's tentacles to this proposal that
Correct.
they don't understand, or that they there's parts they don't like, parts they do like. How did that come about? Why is there so many things that you have to talk about related to this proposal?
Sure. Well, let's start with how we fund roads and how long it's been.
Great.
Last time we had an increase in our road funding in the state of Michigan in the tax was in 1997, when we set the per gallon fuel price tax for a gallon of gas at 19 cents. So back in 97, that was looked at as being adequate funding for that time. Well, of course, the price of fuel's gone up, the price of salt and concrete and asphalt, because it's primarily oil-based. Everything's mushroomed since then in cost. And our return on that 19 cents has gradually diminished. If you think about it, it really, very understandable. Our costs have all gone up, and we're all using less gasoline now than we used to. We get higher miles per gallon cars. So the amount of gas we purchase has gone down. So that 19 cents actually generates less money today than it used to. So we're trying to repair more expensive roads with less money. And that's part of the problem we've faced. If in 97, when that proposal passed, when it was passed through the legislature, if it would have had an index for inflation on it, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion today. We would have been okay. Well, that's not what happened. And when I was campaigning last August, talking to people about road funding, people were very shocked to find out that, they were saying, well, we have one of the highest gasoline taxes in the country. That isn't quite right. We pay some of the highest taxes at the pump, but not gas tax. Because Michigan's one of a few states, a handful of states, that charges sales tax on gasoline.
Right.
So that 6% we pay at the pump, at $4, 6%, that's 24 cents a gallon. When it was all getting close to $4, it's down right now. That 24 cents, almost all of it goes to schools. It doesn't go to roads. And people were very upset, very concerned that what they were paying at the pump wasn't going to fix the roads. And that was one of the things the legislature, the House in particular, heard loud and strong from people. What we pay at the pump, we want to go to roads. So to do that, we have to take the sales tax off gasoline, And that creates a big hole in school funding. So that's how the sales tax increase proposal, the 1%, came into being, was to refill the money that schools were losing. When we take the sales tax off of gasoline, which is what this proposal calls for, that creates an $800 million hole in the state
In the
budget.
schools funding.
And most of that, about roughly 450, 500 of that goes to schools. Some of it goes to communities through revenue sharing, and some of it goes to the state. But the vast majority goes to schools. So the 1% would backfill that, backfill the money that was lost to local communities through revenue sharing. Revenue sharing is monies that the state collects, and it's been around for years. The state collects it and then divides it up between cities, villages, counties to help them run their government.
Which has decreased
Revenue
in the
sharing,
last 4 or 5 years, decreased incrementally year by year.
year after year, revenue sharing's been cut, starting back in the late Engler administration, early Granholm. As the state got in more budget trouble with the economic slowdown we faced, one of the first things that was cut was revenue sharing to local communities.
Right, sure was.
So this would reinstate it.
And I can't help when we're going back historically to 97, and this is a question that I've asked and keep saying, how come nobody's asking that? Well, I'm finding out the more I read, people are asking. Originally, in 1973 or 72, they started the lottery in the state of Michigan, stating it was for school funding and road funding, or keeping our highways moving. What happened to that?
Well,
and how is that being?
It's there. When the proposal was actually, the way it was worded, it didn't commit that it was going to go to schools. Part of the advertising for it said that it will get more money for the state that they could use for schools and other programs. But the legislature has allotted this, and here's a copy of these little cards. I've got them in our office. If anybody would like one, we can get one to you. It's a copy of the budget. It's got spending and revenues on either sides. And if you look on here for the school aid fund, the lottery and casino waging brings in $888 million to the state. So that money does go to schools. Now what the state did that was a bit crafty, if you would, at the time, when the money started coming in from the lottery for schools, they took, for every dollar that went in from lottery, they took $1 out from the general fund monies. So it didn't really increase school funding much, if any. I wasn't around back then at the legislature. But one of the things, people think the lottery raises a lot of money. Well, $888 million is a lot of money. But when you look at the total school aid fund, it's $12 billion. School aid fund.
That's what we are committed.
That's spending that's accumulated throughout the state through various funds, tobacco taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, and such, that goes into the school aid fund. The lottery money does go there.
Okay, good to hear. I've been asking that question,
Right in
and nobody
print.
can answer that. I'm glad to hear it. So speaking of the money that the state is hoping to reestablish with this tax, another question that I've heard is not all of that money is going to go to, number one, our roads and our schools. Some of it's going to paying back debt, correct?
Correct.
Is that in the road funding back debt, or what
Yes.
back debt are we
Sure,
paying?
let's talk about that for a minute. And I have to say right off the bat, I am in favor of the proposal, but I'm going to try to give you a balance, as message as I can, both sides of the issue. The people who say vote no, only $400 million is really going to roads. $400 million is the amount that's anticipated to go into road construction formulas for the first year. Back in the 90s, when we had the last gas tax proposal was passed, Governor Engler, and then following up Governor Granholm, wanted to get as much road work done as quick as we could, because the roads were in bad shape at that time also. So they took out a whole variety of loans. The Michigan Department of Transportation took out a lot of loans to get construction going. We still owe about $1.2 billion on those loans that were taken out in the 90s and the early 2000s. So the way it's going to be set up is the first year, $400 million will go to roads and about $860 million to pay down debt.
Okay.
The second year, $860 in round numbers will go to roads, $400 will go to debt, and in year 3, all $1.2 will go to roads. A couple of things that I think are a good idea with it, the way that's set up. And for any of the viewers out there who get Capital Confidential or are familiar with CAPCOM from the Mackinac Center, which is a think tank, conservative think tank out of Midland, they came out with one of their newsletters, I think it was March 30th, saying that this paying down of debt made sense and it was a good idea.
That's always a good idea.
We pay hundreds of millions of dollars in finance fees every year on that. So
And interest.
first thing, it pays it down, gets rid of that debt at whatever interest rate, and I don't know what that is, but it pays off that debt
In 3 years.
in 3 years. The other question that comes up is how fast can we get construction crews out there on the road to fix the roads? How many projects are what we refer to as shovel ready, where the plans are all drawn up, the easements are ready to go, where you can say, bid on it and do the job? There's a question, how many of those are out there? So first off, can we gear up to do
Excuse me.
$1.2 billion the first year?
Right.
Probably not. The other question that comes up along that line is any of you know who've had to deal with contractors or bidding jobs, if there's a high demand, the price of your project goes up. So if we have Oakland County, Genesee County, the state of Michigan, Oxford Township, all doing projects at the same time, where that bid might have come in at, say, $2 million, maybe it'll come in at $275 the first year because there's all this demand. I think it makes sense to phase it in over a couple years. So only 100 or 400 is going to roads. There's more of it going to roads, but not to concrete and asphalt the first year. Second year and third year, it all gears in.
Now, are there projects that are that's kind of a silly question. I know there's projects, such as bridge projects, that should have been taken care of 3 or 4 years ago. Is that something that, so people see where their money's going, is that something, the emergency situations, are they going to get taken care of right away?
Well,
like in the next year and a half or
sure.
so? People want to see what's happening with their money.
One of the bills, one of the other complaints, if I can shift gears for a half a second.
Yeah.
One of the other complaints about the proposal is it's very confusing, and there's 11 bills that are in the total package for everything. If everything one vote for the public, 11 bills pass.
Right.
One of those has to do with increasing warranties. One of them has to do with quality of workmanship. There's some different areas there that have to do with really the quality of the work that's done.
Which is nice to see. But why do we have to do that?
Well, we do
why does that have to be a written?
We do a lot of that now. Michigan is one of the foremost states in warranties across the country. People chuckle when I say this.
Yeah.
But Michigan Department of Transportation is looked at as one of the premier organizations across the country. We've just been underfunding them for a long time.
Right.
So one of the other parts of that bill has to do with what's called asset management, which is what Oakland County's been doing for years. The state's been doing it for years. But a lot of the other counties and communities across the state don't. And that's where they do an evaluation of all their roadways and say this is a poor road, this is a fair road, this is a good road, this road is excellent. And they do a different evaluation of the roads. Then it's a matter of using that asset management plan to figure out what projects need priority work. And here's part of the problem we have is so many of our roads are fair to poor right now. And it costs about 6 times as much money to take a poor road to good is a fair road to good.
Right.
So it's like $1 from good to fair and $6 from bad to good. So they have to look and sort of, safety goes into an aspect there.
Sure.
The Rouge River Bridge down Detroit area. There was a story on the news last weekend that you could actually see the water through the holes in the roadway. Some of those things will get prioritized, but sure, each community, each municipality that gets money from this proposal will need to look at their priorities and figure out what's a safety fix, what's a Band-Aid fix, and what's a major rebuild.
So if this passes, I think people want to see that legislature, it doesn't get dropped right there, that then we will hit the ground running and get some of this stuff taken care of. Because as you said, we saw the Rouge River Bridge. One part of me was saying, is that because there's this campaign going on for Proposal 1? Or, wow, is it really that bad and we're just noticing it? And when are we going to get it fixed?
Yeah, it's really that bad. When you travel around, and you can go onto the MDOT website and look at a number of reports. Oakland County, they have maps colored with where the roads are, where the bridges are that are in better, worse condition and such. But you travel around, a lot of the bridges, they do have pieces of plywood underneath, metal mesh to help catch things that might be dropping. And people say, well, the roads weren't built right, or we build them really poorly. Ohio roads are so much better. We hear a whole variety of stories like that, and I have to say I think it's nonsense. Ohio roads are better, but they spend $100 per person more a year than we do in Michigan.
And they have toll roads. That's another question I have for you. Why do we not have toll roads?
We don't have toll roads because when our roads were built, we used a combination of public, state, and public federal money. And depending on how you finance your road, you can or cannot have a toll road. Initially.
So we would have to build a new road to have a toll road.
If we were going to have a toll road from Oxford to Grand Rapids, it would have to be a whole new road, funded in a different manner, and to collect the money, the tolls on that. It doesn't work here. But Ohio spends $100 per person, man, woman, and child, more than we do in Michigan. Also, I think it's a misnomer. I had to go to Ohio last year to pick up a part for a trailer down near Sylvania. And the roads from Sylvania to Toledo were about as bad as anything we've got around here. And then when we went from Toledo, south of Toledo, to the hotel my wife and I stayed at, we went through an area around the Maumee River where they've been building bridges and doing repairs on that section of highway. For years they've been working on it. That road's not in all that great shape.
No,
but
true.
From the Jeep plant to the Michigan border is like glass. And I really think they plan on it that way to make us all feel bad when we come to Michigan. But overall, Ohio roads, but they build them the same way. We all use the same type of gravel. We all use the same federal specifications. One of the analogies I've been using for folks is it's a little like painting your house. You paint your house, it's terrific. The second year, you've got a few spots where the paint's starting to bubble. You scrape it and you touch it up. Second year, you scrape and touch up a couple more spots. The third year, maybe you scrape and patch it up. And fourth year, it's time to redo it. What we haven't done in Michigan, because we've tried to save up money to do major projects, is we've fallen down on that little maintenance that needs to be done every year. You see the guys out there putting the hot tar in the cracks.
Cold patch.
Well, not cold patch, but the hot tar where they'll go out with the guns and they'll put it like caulking, basically.
That's
what we needed to do. We didn't do that. We didn't do a lot of follow-up work that needed to be done to maintain the roads. Now, I've gotten some questions about some work that was done here on North M24 last year. They came through and on some of the really bad spots, particularly on the southbound lanes from about Davison Lake Road down to roughly down to probably Dunlap Road. They put asphalt on selected portions. That is a Band-Aid.
Yes, it is.
We all know what happens to Band-Aids, they fall off. That was intended to last for a year or two until hopefully there was some more money to do a more major rebuild. So a lot of the work that we've seen done, particularly with asphalt over concrete, people will say, well, it hasn't held up. Well, it really wasn't intended to last a long time. It's a quick fix to fix the major holes that are starting to open up, get the water to sheet off rather than go into those cracks and make it worse. And
Band-Aid on a
folks think, oh, it's, you know, you're not doing a good job. Well, we didn't have the money to do an A1 job, so we've been doing a lot of Band-Aids.
So a lot of people are talking about redistribution of other funds, other items within the budget, and filter that down rather than giving a higher gas tax. What's your answer to that? And that will lead me to my final question to you, what it takes to put a proposal like this together. But we're hearing different answers, or not one that seems to be satisfying the questions I've been reading that people have had.
Well, let's go back. So it's been 97 since we had a gas proposal.
Yeah, which is amazing.
I've been in the legislature for 4 years. When I went in there with my associates at that time, roads were bad then. That was one of the things we keep talking about, we've kept talking about and kept talking about. And you know, you've got 110 in the House, 38 in the Senate and the governor. So you got to get something that the majority of those folks agree on.
They want to talk about.
And it hasn't happened. Now, the sales tax proposal, I've been an advocate for a sales tax increase for roads for 3 years. Not quite in this format with it being as complicated as it is. I would have much rather seen, shall we increase the sales tax 1%, dedicate it to roads, period. That would have raised about rough numbers, about $700 million. Got us most of the way to the 1.2 we need. That didn't happen. There was a Senate proposal that just raised the gas tax alone, left sales tax on. When we were looking at doing that last fall, the price of gasoline was almost $4 a gallon. Not too many people would have been very happy with the legislature if we would have increased the price of gas from $4 to $4.25 or so at that time. The House proposal had a similar increase in the gas tax, but took sales tax off, but didn't put any provisions in for how to replace that $800 million that was lost primarily for schools. I voted for it because I thought it would be a good spot for a merger, a compromise of areas. This was the compromise we came up with. There's a variety of different proposals that are out there right now. Let me try to hit on a couple of them. One of which is Senator Colbeck mentions fairly frequently, it's gotten on WJR a number of times, about privatizing the rest areas. Well, we can't do that for a number of reasons. First off, here again, they were done with a combination of state and federal monies. Also, if you're in there next time, look at the stickers that are on the vending machines. And all the monies from revenues that are collected at roadsides and state facilities, not parks are different, but state facilities, goes through the Bureau of Handicap Services for the Blind. And it's to go for programs to help retraining and provide training and assistance for those with sight impairments. So there's a sticker right on almost all those machines. So it really doesn't work. Besides that, if you had a fast food establishment in Lapeer, and all of a sudden you had a competitor 2 miles down the road on a state sanctioned thing, would not go over very well. And it doesn't generate that much money. There's a discussion about taking money from the catastrophic health fund, which we all pay into with our auto insurance. We pay into a fund that if, God forbid, you are catastrophically injured in a car accident, you end up on a ventilator, have to have 24-hour health care, it goes to cover those expenses.
You're getting state assistance at that point.
Well, you're getting, but it's money.
It's your own money.
It's money we paid in.
That's
the thing. It's not state money. So the idea that we're going to borrow money out of a fund that isn't state money to start with, it's not going to happen. And it would be years of lawsuits to do
Sure,
that.
it would. Understandably, in that
So,
respect.
and there's an idea that there's a lot of money in Lansing. You know, our budget's a little over $52 billion for the state budget. Of that, the vast majority of it is restricted funds, things that come in.
Sure.
A lot of it's federal money that has to be used for various welfare, human services programs, Medicaid, Medicare, things where the money's earmarked for something already. We have very little control over it. There's, in round numbers, a little over $9 billion the state has control over, out of 52.
Wow.
Out of that, we have to keep 1/3 of it for matching funds.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So, for example, airports are a great example. For every dollar the state puts into an airport, the federal government gives us, I believe it's $8 or $9.
Yeah, that's
Great
pretty
return
great.
on investment.
Yes, it is.
So
you got to have those.
So
funds
1/3 of that
available.
we have to keep for
Sure.
investment. Excuse me, for matching
grant.
funds.
Yeah, right.
So that leaves us with about $6 billion to run the state budget, to rest the rest of the state. Now, corrections alone is just a hair under $2 billion of the 6 is just prisons.
So now we have 4.
So now we got 4.
Yeah.
So then we've got community health costs, we've got other education things, state police, higher education, general government expenses. We run almost the rest of this, pretty much the whole state runs on about 6 actual state programs.
So have they taken a
On
look
6.
at higher education and cutting that funding a little bit more? Because we all know higher education, universities make good dollars just out of their tuition or out of state tuition. Have you looked, has that been a consideration?
That's looked at all the time.
I know that
But
people talk about it.
here again, the amount of money that we would be able to take out of that, we've got 1.2 in higher education right now.
Million. Billion or million? Gotta
Billion.
be billion.
1.2 in higher ed. The reason students are running up so much in debt in college and the tuition, the state's cut dramatically back on the state share.
Right, and I remember that.
When we were in college,
Yeah.
a few moons ago, the state used to cover about 60 to 70% of a college education. Right now, it's about 35%.
Right.
There's not a whole lot more. Now, they can certainly raise tuition, although we've been trying to keep them
from doing so.
If they want state money right
Right.
now, we put parameters on. You can only raise your tuition, 1%, 2% per year, and try to get some cost controls on it for higher ed. It's difficult. It's going to be, every program you think you can cut a little out of, there's a whole contingency,
Strings attached.
strings attached. I've told people before, there's 2 sides to every story. In Lansing, there's 14 sides to every story.
Well, that leads me to, how long did it take for this proposal to finally be put together? And I know you talked about it a little bit. You've been trying to do something since you got there.
Well, that's it.
What does it take when there's such divisions? And it's certainly everybody has their own personal interests as well as their community interests on where those dollars are going to go. The state dollars, every dollar that's in there. How does this happen? I'm amazed at all the attachments. I'm amazed at how you figured out where the funding is going to go. And I'm not going to say I'm for it or against it either way right now, because I'm still trying
Sure.
to gather the information.
Do your homework.
I appreciate that you've gotten this far with us, but how did that happen? How does it happen?
Well,
Really?
the Senate has their transportation committee. The House
Okay.
transportation committee is where I sit. So we work on a variety of different transportation issues, and of course, road repairs and funding is one of the primary issues we keep talking about. There were proposals to raise registration fees, at one point $150 per car. I register 5
Right.
cars, my wife, mine, my kids.
Oh, right.
Every January, that's $750 more. We called
Happy
it the birthday tax. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So with the sales tax, instead of paying it all in January, I can pay a lower amount over an entire year rather than one. So you get different ideas come forward, they get discussed back and forth. You know, it was getting to be an election year last year. We'd all made a commitment long before that we were going to try to solve the road funding issue. The House had a proposal, the Senate had a proposal in December, which is referred to as lame duck, the end of the term of office. A lot of compromises are made to try to get things accomplished. You get people who are not running for office again and are willing to stick their neck out and say, okay, let's go for a tax increase.
Okay.
You know, I've been fortunate in that I have a family business I can go back to and work, and I've got things I can do. But there's a number of legislatures that this is their only income.
Right.
And they're always worried about getting reelected.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's a combination of things, but it was a compromise at the last minute in late December. Nobody was really happy with the proposal, especially with the complexity of it. But it was what we came up with. People are mad at the legislature. You didn't do your job. Well, we did our job. We put a proposal forward. You may not like the proposal, but it's the best we've got right now. And if it doesn't pass, we're probably going to nickel and dime some other programs, but we won't be able to come up with $1.2 billion on ongoing funds.
Programs.
In ongoing funds, because we don't need this just one time. We need this for years.
Forever, right. Do you think it might make it a little more palatable if some of this funding wasn't earmarked for public transportation? Although I understand the needs of the many and the needs of the few, but if we're going to pay for our own transportation out of our own pocketbook, our own car payment, our own insurance, and now our own gas tax that will increase, we're being asked also to pay for public transportation.
We always have, for years and years, we've paid a portion into what's called the Comprehensive Transportation Fund that goes into buses, airports, railroad transportation, those type of things. That's been there. It's been there for a long time. There was discussion about taking these funds, similar to some of the additional. We put about $650 million in sales tax money that was extra money that we hadn't budgeted for over the last couple of years because the economy's been coming back. We injected that into the middle of Public Act 51.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a very complex formula. It's there's 3 pages of it. There's just page 1, page 2, and page 3. And this is the formula that's used to determine how the monies that go into the transport funds get divided out.
Per community.
For the in rough numbers, 39% goes to state, 39% goes to county, and the other 20% goes to local communities.
Of the Act 51
Of
funds.
the Act 51 money.
Right.
And that's after bits and pieces of it get taken out. Now one of the things I really do like about the sales tax proposal on it is you mentioned people who don't have a car, so they're not paying for it. Well, if they're not paying for it, how are we getting any funding from them?
Right.
And if you think about it, everybody, even if you don't have a car, uses the roads because their groceries get delivered in a truck, the clothing that they buy at the department store gets there in a truck. Everything we do depends on transportation through trucks. So with putting it on the gas tax, those individuals who don't have a car pay for part of it. Those individuals who have hybrid or electric cars who don't buy nearly as much gas as I do for my car, they pay a little bit more into it. And it balances it out more. And we've got a lot of tourists coming to the state of Michigan too. They argue that it's a 17% increase in the sales tax. Well, it's 17%. If you go from 6% to 7%, that's a 17% increase. You're playing games with numbers.
Right.
It's a 1% increase, really, in
Semantics.
all intents and purposes. It's a 1% increase that divides the funds up amongst a broad range of people to help get the money we need to fix the roads. And I think that's I think it's a good way to go. We'll see what happens on May 5th.
Well, I think you made it a lot clearer.
I hope so.
For me anyhow, and I think other people. I tried to ask questions that I had seen out there on the internet, and yes, we will see how it goes on May 5th. The most important thing is to get people out there to vote.
That's it.
Right?
It's the only thing on the ballot, the only proposal out there that day.
I could talk to you about so many levels of what's going on where you work.
We haven't scratched the surface.
I know, so you're going to have
Let's do
to
it
come
again.
back. Please, I really appreciate you coming in.
My pleasure.
It's always been a fascination to me, so, and hopefully other people, so please come back, and thank you for joining us this time.
Very good. Maybe next time Bill will join us.
Yeah, we'll have to drag him in. May 5th.
Well, there you go. Now you can tell your friends that this story will be in our community access all week. Check it on Monday through Saturday, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and again 7. So for our reporter, editor Terry Stiles, I am Bill Service, and you have a great, great week.